The Star Voyager cut through the deep blue clouds like a silver arrow, its engines humming softly as it descended. Inside, John sat with his seatbelt tight, his hands gripping the armrest. He was not afraid of flying. He had been to several alien worlds before, but this mission was different. No one had told them much about Volari Prime, except that it was beautiful, peaceful, and had unique customs. That last phrase bothered him. Unique customs. What does that even mean? The ship landed smoothly on a vast platform of white stone. Beyond the windows, John saw tall crystal towers that caught the sunlight and turned it into rainbows. The air shimmered with tiny glowing insects that danced above gardens, filled with blue-leafed trees and silver flowers. The door opened, and warm air rushed in, carrying a strange, sweet scent like honey and something else he couldn't name. The human diplomatic team walked out, their black and blue uniforms neat and official. John followed behind Ambassador Reeves, the mission leader. A crowd of tall, slender aliens stood waiting. Their skin was a soft golden shade, their hair long and shimmering, some silver, some bright copper. They wore flowing robes made of shining fabric that shifted colors as they moved. The robes reached the ground, with high collars and wide sleeves. At the center stood the Volari leader, wearing a robe patterned with swirls of gold and deep blue. Beside him stood a young woman, beautiful, with sharp yet elegant features. Her eyes bright, like green gemstones. Her robe was more colorful than the others, decorated with small glowing threads that sparkled when she moved. John expected a handshake, or maybe a bow. Instead, the leader raised his arm slightly and stepped back, allowing the women at the front to move forward. Without a single word, they each took hold of their robes and slowly lifted the skirts halfway up. The humans froze. For a long, awkward moment, no one spoke. The air felt heavy, even though nothing threatening was happening. John blinked, unsure if he was supposed to look away or stare. The lifted skirts revealed not bare skin but an inner layer of cloth, hidden until now. These inner panels were covered in patterns, stars, lines, swirls, shapes John didn't understand. The women stood silently, holding the pose, their faces calm, even expectant. It was clearly not a joke for them. Ambassador Reeves' face went pale. One of the security officers coughed nervously. A young diplomat behind John whispered, "Is this what it looks like?" John's mind raced. If this was some kind of challenge or insult, reacting wrong could ruin the entire mission. He glanced at the leader's daughter, the one with the green eyes. She was staring right at him, her expression unreadable, as if she was waiting for him to do something. He could feel everyone's eyes on him now. His heart pounded. This was the exact kind of weird cultural moment that could start a war if you messed it up, okay? Think. What would a Volari expect? John decided to keep it respectful. He took one slow step forward, placed his hand over his heart, and gave a small bow. It wasn't much, but it was the safest move he could think of without knowing the rules. To his relief, the alien women lowered their skirts at once. The leader gave a slight smile. The crowd made a soft sound like a breath of approval and the tension faded. The group moved forward, the humans following their guides into the wide crystal gates of the city. But John's thoughts stayed on that strange greeting as they walked through streets paved with white stone. Lined with glowing plants, a translator young alien man walked up beside John. "You did well," the translator said in accented English. "You returned the honor without breaking the pattern." "Pattern?" John asked. The translator nodded. "What they showed you under the skirts, that is the life fabric. It tells their history. The colors, the shapes, they are the person's story. To reveal it is to give trust. The leader's daughter Lysera revealed hers to you. That is rare." John frowned. "And if I'd done something wrong?" The translator's smile faded. Then you would have insulted her before the entire council. John laughed weakly, though his palms were still damp with sweat. Great. No pressure. But he couldn't help thinking about those green eyes staring at him and the glowing threads in her robe. Why had she chosen him? As they reached the great hall, with its high crystal ceiling and pillars shaped like twisting vines, John looked over his shoulder. Sarah was still there, walking behind her father. But her eyes flicked toward him briefly before she turned away. It was only a second, but it felt like a silent message. And John had no idea yet just how deep that single glance was going to pull him into Valari customs. And danger. The great hall of Valari Prime shimmered like the inside of a diamond. Light from the crystal ceiling broke into hundreds of colors, casting rainbows over the polished floor. Human and Valari leaders took their seats at the long ceremonial table. John sat midway down the human side, still trying to shake the memory of the strange skirt-lifting greeting outside. He felt like he'd just been thrown into a game. With rules no one had explained, Ambassador Reeves began the formal introductions. The Valari leader, High Speaker Thaloran, spoke in a deep, steady voice. A translator relayed each sentence, but even without it, John could hear the authority in Thaloran's tone. Lysera, the leader's daughter, sat beside him, quiet and composed. Her colorful robe shimmered under the light, the glowing threads in it forming patterns that seemed to shift when she moved. She didn't look at John, not directly, but every now and then. He thought he caught her watching him from the corner of her eye. When the greetings were done, attendants brought out trays of crystal cups filled with a bright green drink. The translator explained it was a welcoming beverage made from the sap of the moonvine. John lifted his cup and took a cautious sip. It was sweet, but with a strange, tingling aftertaste, like tiny bubbles dancing on his tongue. Across the table, Lysera drank slowly, her gaze still fixed somewhere near him. Then, without warning, she stood. The room fell silent. She walked gracefully around the table, stopping in front of John. Every eye turned toward them. His stomach tightened. Without saying a word, Lysera took the hem of her robe and lifted it halfway again, this time directly to him. The patterns on the inner fabric seemed brighter than before, almost glowing. The translator beside John stiffened. "This is a personal gesture," he whispered quickly. "It is no longer a greeting, it is a declaration." John blinked. "A declaration of what?" The translator's voice dropped lower. "Means she offers you alignment, to stand together in the eyes of her people." John's brain stuttered. This was only day one. He was here for a trade agreement, not whatever this was. "Ah, so, like a friendship thing?" he asked hopefully. The translator hesitated. "Not exactly." The entire hall was watching. Lysera's face remained calm, but there was a strange sharpness in her eyes, as if this wasn't just some ceremonial act, was a test. John remembered what the translator had said earlier. "Never reveal your own legs unless you mean a lifetime." Promise. Yeah. That was not happening, so he did the only thing he could think of. He stood, placed his right hand over his heart again, and bowed slightly lower than before. A ripple of murmurs passed through the Valari side of the room. Lysera lowered. Her robe slowly nodded once, and then turned to walk back to her seat. The conversation in the hall resumed, but the air felt different, no more charged. John sat down, his pulse still racing. "Was that okay?" he asked the translator. The translator gave a small smile. "You did not refuse. That is important. And if I had?" John asked. The translator's smile faded. "Then she would have been shamed before all. And you would be her enemy forever." "Great," John muttered. "I'm making friends fast." The rest of the meeting passed without incident, at least on the surface. But John could feel it in the way the Valari guards glanced at him now, the way some whispered behind their hands. Something had changed. When the formal talks ended, the humans were escorted to their guest quarters, a series of airy crystal rooms connected by open balconies overlooking the gardens. John had just stepped onto his balcony to breathe in the night air when a voice spoke from behind him. "You bowed lower this time." He turned. Lysera stood in the doorway, her robe catching the pale light of Valara's twin moons. "I figured it was safer than guessing wrong," he said, her lips curved slightly, almost a smile. "You did not guess wrong." She stepped forward, the glowing threads in her robe shifting into new shapes. "Do you know what pattern I showed you?" John shook his head. "It is the story of my life," she said. "And now, because you did not refuse, it is also the beginning of your story. Here." He wasn't sure what to say to that. "Is this normal for visitors?" Lysera tilted her head. "No, it is not normal at all." Before he could ask what she meant, a sharp horn sounded in the distance. Lysera's smile vanished. "That is a summons," she said quickly, "and not a good one." In the next moment, a Valari guard appeared at the balcony entrance. "Princess," the guard said urgently, "the rival clan demands audience with the humans now." Lysera's eyes locked on John. "Then you must be careful," she said softly. "They have their own way of lifting skirts, and it is not for peace." The horn echoed through the crystal streets like a warning from the gods. Even the glowing insects in the garden seemed to freeze in midair. John stood on the balcony beside Lysera, his chest tight. The Valari guard's words rang in his ears. "The rival clan demands audience with the humans now." The guard bowed quickly to Lysera and left without waiting for a reply. Lysera turned to John. Her usual calm was gone, replaced with a sharper, almost fierce expression. "You should know," she said, "the rival clan will not greet you as we do. Their customs are aggressive." John gave a short laugh, though it was nervous. "Aggressive? How?" "Like skirt lifting, but with attitude." Lysera didn't smile. "They will show you the black fabric. And that means?" "It means they are declaring you unworthy." Her gaze didn't waver. "And if you react badly, they will claim insult and demand combat." John's stomach sank. "Perfect. That's exactly what I came here for. Raelian fashion-based duels." Lysera stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Stay near me. Do not answer their challenge unless you are certain of your choice. And if I move in front of you, let me speak." Minutes later, they were escorted through the moonlit streets to a darker part of the city. The beautiful crystal architecture was replaced by black stone walls, sharp angles, and banners dyed a deep red. A group waited for them in a square lit by blue fire torches. These Valari were different. Their robes were plainer, their faces harder. At the center stood their leader, a tall man with silver scars across his cheek. As soon as the humans stepped into the square, several women from the rival clan stepped forward. They grabbed the hems of their robes and lifted them, but instead of bright, colorful patterns like Lysera's people, the inner fabric was a solid, lifeless black. John remembered Lysera's warning. He kept his expression neutral, though every instinct told him to react somehow. The rival leader spoke, his voice cold. The translator beside John explained, "They say the humans have no stories, no worth, and no place here." John's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Lysera moved. She stepped directly in front of him, her robe swirling around her ankles. Then, without hesitation, she lifted her skirt halfway, revealing her brilliant life patterns for all to see. Gasps rippled through the rival clan. The black fabric women lowered their skirts sharply, some looking away. The translator whispered in disbelief. She just challenged their judgment. "That means she binds her fate to yours in public." John blinked. "She, what?" The rival leader narrowed his eyes. "If the princess wishes to defend a human," he said through the translator, "then we demand the trial of fabrics." Lysera didn't hesitate. Accept it. John leaned toward her, whispering urgently, "What's the trial of fabrics?" She glanced at him. "You will see." The rival leader gestured toward a tall torch. "By dawn," the translator said, "you must weave your own life pattern and reveal it before all. If it is judged unworthy, you will leave Valari Prime in shame, and so will she." John felt the weight of 100 eyes on him. This wasn't just about some colorful cloth. Anymore, his actions could ruin the peace talks. And Lysera standing among her people. He swallowed. "Guess I'd better learn to weave really fast." They were escorted back under heavy guard, given a small working room in the guest quarters. Lysera set a basket of shimmering thread on. The table threads in every color John had ever seen, and some he hadn't. "This," she said, "is moon silk. Each color holds meaning. Blue for peace, red for courage, gold for honor, green for life." John picked up a thread, holding it against the light, and black. Her eyes met his. Black means nothing. It is the absence of story. He understood. Now, the rival clan wasn't just insulting him, they were trying to erase him before he even arrived. Lysera began to show him the basic weaving technique. Her hands were quick, graceful, while his were clumsy at first. But slowly, he started to get the rhythm as they worked. She spoke softly about her own life, how the patterns in her robe showed the years she trained in diplomacy, the time she crossed the sea to meet other clans, and the moment she earned the right to stand at her father's side. "You will have your own colors," she said. "Tell me your story, and I will help you weave it." John hesitated. "Well, I grew up on Earth. I trained as an interpreter for alien languages. I've traveled to 5 worlds so far. And," he glanced at her, "I'm currently trying not to mess up your entire political career." That made her laugh quietly, a soft sound that eased some of the tension in the room. They worked through the night, the moonlight spilling across the table. Thread by thread, the fabric began to take shape, a mix of human and Valari symbols, side by side. But just as the first light of dawn began to glow at the horizon, John reached for the last spool of moon silk. And found it missing. He searched. The table, the floor, nothing. Lysera's eyes narrowed. It was here. They both looked toward the open balcony door. A faint shadow moved beyond it. John didn't think he ran. John burst through the balcony door into the cool morning air. The twin moons were fading in the sky, replaced by a soft golden light from Valari's rising sun. Down below, narrow streets twisted between black stone walls. He spotted the shadow again, a small figure running fast, clutching something that glowed faintly in the dim light. The stolen moon silk thread. "Stop!" John shouted, even though he doubted the thief understood English. The figure didn't slow down. Lysera appeared beside him, her robe swaying as she leaned over the railing. "It's a child," she said quickly, "from the rival clan." The boy darted into an alley. John didn't hesitate. He vaulted over the railing and landed on the street below, the shock running up his legs. Lysera followed, surprisingly quick for someone in a long robe. They chased the boy through winding streets, until he finally stopped in a dead-end courtyard. He turned, clutching the moon silk to his chest, his eyes wide. John held up his hands, breathing hard. "Hey, I'm not going to hurt you." The boy looked from John to Lysera. His voice was barely a whisper, but the translator device on Lysera's wrist caught it. "I was told to take it. They said, if you fail, my clan will be strong again." John stepped closer, keeping his voice calm. "And what about you? Do you think it's right to ruin someone else's work?" The boy hesitated, his grip loosening. He was scared, but also ashamed. Finally, he held out the moon-silk. John took it. Gently. "Thank you," he said, then surprised himself by adding, "Go home. And don't let them use you like this again." Lysera watched silently as the boy ran off. When John turned to her, she shook her head slightly, a small smile on her lips. "You could have punished him. It would have been the Valari way." "Yeah," John said, tucking the moonsilk safely away. "But that's not the human way." They returned to the guest quarters and finished the weaving. By the time the sun had fully risen, the life fabric was complete, a rich tapestry of colors and symbols. Blue waves for John's journeys, gold lines for his achievements, red arcs for his courage, and green spirals woven with Lysera's own patterns showing their shared night of work. Lysera held it up, her eyes catching the light. "It is strong," she said. "It speaks well." John smiled, but the knot in his stomach hadn't gone away. "Now we just have to hope your rivals think so." The trial was held in the central square of the rival clan's territory. Hundreds gathered, their robes swaying in the wind. The black fabric women stood in a line, their faces hard and unreadable. At the front, the rival leader waited beside a tall frame made of carved black wood. It was here that the life fabric would be hung for all to see. John stepped forward with Lysera beside him. The crowd fell silent. The rival leader spoke, his voice sharp. The translator announced, "The human will now reveal his story. Let the fabric speak truth, be torn." John took a deep breath and carefully hung the fabric on the frame. The morning sun caught the threads, making them glow almost as if they were alive. A ripple went through the crowd. Murmurs spread. Even the rival leader's eyes narrowed not in anger, but in curiosity. One of the elder women stepped forward, inspecting the fabric closely. She traced the green and gold patterns with her fingertips. Her expression softened just for a second. "This is not only your story," the translator whispered to John. "It is hers as well. They can see that." Lysera stepped forward, lifting her robe halfway to reveal her own patterns. The crowd gasped. The green spirals in John's fabric matched the ones in her robe exactly. It was a public declaration that their stories were now linked. The rival leader stared at them both for a long moment. Finally, he stepped back. "The fabric is worthy," the translator said, relief in his voice. "The trial is past." The crowd began to disperse, but John could feel the weight of what had just happened. This wasn't only about passing. Some test it was about crossing a line that couldn't be uncrosse. As they walked back toward the gates, Lysera glanced at him. "You understand now," she said softly. "Understand what?" he asked. "That you are part of my story, and I am part of yours." John opened his mouth to reply, but a sharp sound cut through the air horn blast, this time different from before. Lysera's eyes darkened. "That," she said, "is not a summons. That is a call to gather for judgment." Before John could ask what she meant, Valari guards surrounded them. The leader of the guard spoke quickly, his tone urgent. Lysera looked at John, her expression unreadable. "The council is meeting now, and they are not all pleased with what you have done." The council chamber was nothing like the glittering crystal halls John had seen before. This one was darker, older, its walls carved from deep red stone that seemed to absorb sound. A great circular table filled the center, surrounded by tall seats where clan leaders sat in heavy robes at the far end. High Speaker, the Lauren Lysera's father, sat with a face carved from stone. His golden robe shimmered faintly in the torchlight. On his left sat the rival clan leader, his expression cool, unreadable. John was led to the center of the chamber. Lysera walked at his side, her robe flowing behind her, the patterns on it glowing faintly under the torchlight. The rival leader spoke first, his voice echoing through the chamber. The translator's voice followed. "The human has passed the trial, but only by binding himself to the princess. This was not part of the agreement. It changes everything. John stiffened. He glanced at Lysera, but her eyes stayed on her father. Another council member spoke, her tone sharp. The human's fabric is strong, yet it is not purely his own. A story shared is a story tangled. How can we judge his worth alone? Murmurs spread through the chamber. John could feel the judgment in their eyes. It wasn't enough that he'd made something worthy. They wanted to know why Lysera had tied herself to his story at all. Tha Lauren raised a hand, and the room fell silent. The trial of fabrics, he said, his deep voice carrying easily, is meant to show truth. And truth has been shown. The human has made something that blends our ways with his own. That is rare, but... He turned his gaze to John. You must speak for yourself. Why did you not make a fabric that told only your story? John hesitated. Every instinct told him to be careful, say the wrong thing, and he could undo everything. But something in Lysera's steady gaze gave him courage. Because... My story isn't just mine anymore, John said slowly. If I'm here, if I'm working with your people, then part of my story is hers. We worked through the night together. We wove our colors into the same cloth. You can't just separate that now. The chamber was silent. Some council members looked surprised. Others looked displeased. The rival leader's lip curled slightly. And what if her colors lead you to war? John didn't flinch. Then I'll still stand with her. That's the choice I made when I didn't walk away from her greeting. A long pause followed. Then the elder woman from the trial yesterday stood. She was from the rival clan, yet her voice was calm. The human's words match his fabric. It is not a trick. He has chosen a path, and the princess has chosen him in return. To deny this is to deny what the trial revealed. Her words stirred more murmurs, this time softer, less hostile. The Laurens studied John for a moment longer. Then he looked at Lysera. You know the meaning of this choice. Yes, father, she said firmly. I know. The high speaker's face softened just slightly. Then the trial is complete. The human's fabric is accepted. The council meeting ended, but as they walked out into the bright sunlight, Lysera's expression remained thoughtful. That could have gone badly, she said quietly. You think? John replied with a half smile. I was half-expecting them to make me weave another one on the spot. Lysera's lips curved faintly. They might have, if you'd spoken less boldly. They walked through the streets toward the guest quarters. But John could feel eyes following them. Word of the council's decision was spreading fast. In the Volari markets, whispers followed their steps. Some faces were curious, others approving. And a few were openly hostile by the time they reached the garden courtyard of the guest wing. A group of Volari from the rival clan stood waiting. Their leader was not among them, but the black fabric women were. One stepped forward, lifting her skirt halfway. The inner fabric was still solid black, but now there was a single green spiral stitched into it. John glanced at Lysera. She gave a small nod. It means they are watching you, she murmured, but they have left the door open. That night, John couldn't sleep. He stood on the balcony, looking out at the glowing gardens. The air was warm, but his mind was restless. The trial was over, but something told him this was only the beginning. Lysera appeared quietly beside him, her robe loose now, the patterns dimmed. You kept your place today, she said softly. Not many humans could do that. John chuckled. Not many humans get put in a situation where cloth decides their fate. Lysera's smile faded. Slightly, you still don't see it fully. The trial wasn't just about the fabric, it was about trust. You didn't just win the council, you took a step into Volari life you can't undo. John leaned on the railing, watching the moonlight on the crystal towers. Guess I'll just have to see where it leads. Lysera studied him for a moment. Longer, then looked away, toward the city. You will. And so will I. Far in the distance, a single deep horn echoed again, this time low and slow, not urgent. But even in that sound, John felt a hint of something. A warning that the peace they had fought for might still be fragile. Asterisk, the deep horn faded into the night, leaving an uneasy silence over Valari Prime. John leaned on the balcony rail, his mind still turning over Lysera's words. The trial of fabrics was over, but the tension in the air felt thicker than before. He turned to say something to Lysera only, to find her looking sharply toward the garden below. Her body stiffened. "Someone is here," she said quietly. Before John could react, a dark figure darted between the glowing plants, moving quickly toward the outer wall. In the moonlight, John caught a flash of gold, one of the precious fabrics from the council chamber. "They're stealing," he hissed. Lysera was already moving. "That is not just cloth, it's the council's seal fabric. Without it, the rival clan can claim you never passed the trial." John's chest tightened. "Then we get it back." They raced down the spiral stairs, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the crystal walls. The guards posted at the entrance hadn't noticed anything, whoever the thief was. They'd chosen their moment well. John and Lysera slipped into the garden, the glowing flowers lighting their path. Ahead, the figure vaulted over a low wall, landing on a narrow street. "Left," Lysera called, and they both darted into an alley. The thief was too fast to be weighed down by heavy armor. John guessed it was either a younger rival or someone trained for this. The alley split into two paths. Without hesitation, Lysera went right, John went left. Circling to cut the thief off, John's path led him up a sloped street lined with shuttered shop fronts. The air smelled faintly of spiced grain and smoke. He could hear the thief's footsteps on the other side of the wall between them. Moving parallel to him, up ahead, the street curved sharply. If he timed it right, he could meet the thief at the corner. He pushed harder, lungs burning, and burst out into the crossing just as the thief appeared. They almost collided. For a split second, John saw the thief's face under the hood was the same boy who had stolen the moonsilk before. His eyes went wide in shock before he spun away and sprinted toward the marketplace. "Not again," John muttered and took off after him. The marketplace at night was almost empty, the stalls closed, their bright banners folded down. But the boy wove between the wooden stands with the skill of someone who knew every gap and shortcut. Lysera appeared from another street, to him off from behind. The boy skidded to a stop, breathing hard, the golden fabric clutched in his hands. John approached slowly, hands open. "You don't have to do this." The boy shook his head, his voice trembling. "They said if I brought this back, my clan would forgive my family." Lysera's expression softened slightly, but her voice stayed firm. "And if you do this, you will make war. Do you understand that?" The boy's grip on the fabric tightened. "War is already coming." Something in his tone made John's stomach twist. "What do you mean?" But the boy's eyes darted past them. Nan John realized too late that they weren't alone. From the shadows of the market, 4 older Valari stepped forward, their robes marked with the rival clan's red and black patterns. They carried short, curved blades that glinted in the torchlight. One of them spoke sharply in their own language. The translator on Lysera's wrist clicked on, "Give us the cloth, human, and you may walk away." John stepped in front of Lysera instinctively. Not happening. The Valari closest to him smirked. "Then you will bleed for it." Before John could answer, Lysera moved like lightning, pulling a slender blade from her robe. "You will not touch him," she said, her voice ice. The marketplace erupted into motion. Two of the rival warriors lunged for John, forcing him to duck behind a stall. The wood splintered under a blade strike. John grabbed a loose pole from the stall and swung it, knocking one attacker back. Lysera fought with a dancer's grace, her blade flashing as she deflected strikes. The boy froze in the middle of the chaos, clutching the golden fabric to his chest. "Run!" John shouted to him. "Get to the guards!" The boy hesitated, then darted toward the edge of the market. One of the warriors broke off to chase him, but John intercepted, ramming the pole into the man's side. Lysera disarmed her opponent with a sharp twist and sent the blade clattering to the cobblestones. The other warriors, seeing the fight turning against them, exchanged quick looks before melting back into the shadows. When it was over, the market was silent again, except for their heavy breathing. The boy returned, still holding the golden fabric. He handed it to Lysera, his head bowed. "I am sorry," he whispered. Lysera took it gently. "You were used," she said. Do not let them use you again." John rested the pole against a stall, his chest still heaving. "So, is this normal for a diplomatic trip, or am I just lucky?" Lysera gave him a small, tired smile. "With you here, I am beginning to think this is normal." They returned to the guest quarters under the watch of extra guards. The golden fabric was placed back in the council's safe room, sealed behind crystal doors. But as John lay in his room later, staring at the ceiling, he kept hearing the boy's words over and over. War is already coming, and deep down he knew the trial of fabrics had been just the first move in a much bigger game. The next morning, Valari Prime woke under a pale silver sky. Twin moons were still visible, low on the horizon, casting long shadows over the city. John barely slept. The boy's warning war is already coming kept replaying in his head. He knew something big was about to happen, but he didn't know if it would happen today, or if it had already begun. Lysera met him in the courtyard. Her robe was different now, deeper colors, heavier patterns, the glowing threads brighter than he had ever seen them. It made her look both royal and dangerous. "The council has called for one last gathering," she said. "They say it is to seal the matter of your trial. But I think it is more." John's brow furrowed. "More, as in another surprise?" Lysera's gaze was steady. "More as in a declaration, one that cannot be undone." The council chamber was already full when they arrived. Valari from both clans lined the walls, their robes swaying in the cool breeze drifting in from the high windows. The golden fabric from the trial hung at the center, framed by crystal pillars. High Speaker Thaloran rose to speak. "The trial of fabrics was passed, but our people remain divided. The human's place among us is still questioned. Today, we will decide whether he is to be welcomed fully or sent away." The rival clan leader stepped forward, his voice calm but sharp. "If he is to be welcomed, then let him accept the final reveal. Let him show what lies beneath his robe." Gasps murmured through the chamber. John froze. Lysera's hand brushed his lightly. "They are asking for the deepest pledge a Valari can make. In our custom, to lift your robe's inner panel before. The council means binding yourself to our people for life." John's mind raced. "And if I refuse, they will see it as rejection, not just of me, but of all Valari." The rival leader smirked, clearly expecting John to decline. But as John looked around the room, he realized something: this was never just about patterns or fabric. From the first moment the Valari women had lifted their skirts to greet him, they had been showing trust. That bizarre custom was their way of opening their lives to someone else. He thought about Lysera stepping in front of him in the square, revealing her life fabric to defend him. About weaving the fabric together all night. About fighting in the marketplace to keep the golden seal safe. Slowly, he stepped toward the center. The crowd went silent. "I'm not Valari," John said, his voice steady. "But I understand now what this means to you. And if I'm going to be part of this story, your story, then I won't hide mine." He reached down and lifted the panel of the ceremonial robe they had given him for the trial. Inside was the life fabric they had woven, human and Valair. Symbols intertwined. The green spirals of Lysera's story running alongside the gold and blue of his own. The gasps this time were not of shock, but of awe. The sunlight through the crystal windows struck the fabric, making the threads blaze. Like fire, Lysera stepped forward, lifting her own robe halfway. The two fabrics faced each other, matching in parts, different in others, but clearly connected. "This is my story," she said to the council, "and now it is his as well. I claim him under Valari law." The rival leaders' smirk vanished. Thalarin's face softened, and a deep murmur of approval rolled through the chamber. One by one, members of the rival clan began to lift their skirts halfway, not all, but enough to signal a shift. Some fabrics had black panels, but now they bore single-colored symbols stitched into them. It was not peace yet, but it was the first step. The ceremony ended with a formal clasping of hands between John and Thalorin. The High Speaker's grip was firm. "You have walked into our world and stood your ground," he said. "Few outsiders have done so. Fewer still have been claimed." John gave a small, tired smile. "Guess I'm not just a visitor anymore." As they left the chamber, Lysera walked beside him in silence until they reached the sunlit courtyard. "You could have refused," she said finally. "You didn't have to do it." John shrugged. "Maybe not. But if you can risk your story for me, I can do the same for you." Her eyes softened, and for the first time since he had met her, she let the faintest smile stay. "Then from this day, our stories will be told together." That evening, the streets of Valari Prime were alive with quiet celebration. The markets reopened, the glowing flowers in the gardens released their scent into the air, and musicians played soft, flowing notes on crystal instruments. But John knew it wasn't over. The rival clan had not fully accepted peace, and the boy's warning about war still echoed in his mind. Still, as Lysera walked beside him, her robe brushing against his, he realized something important. Sometimes the strangest customs could become the strongest bonds, and on a world where a greeting meant lifting a skirt to reveal your life, he had found a place in someone's story, and she in his.